Good morning, Realtors. This is Nick checking in with you. It is March the 13th, 2023. Good Monday morning. I've got a few updates for you today, and why don't we jump right into it? So, don't call it 2008, but the folks in Washington are certainly starting to be worried about banks again. If you've read the news over the weekend, SVB, the top, I think, 20th largest bank in the country, ran into some major problems. They're not a mega bank like some of the bigger players, but still a very, very large bank. And because of the nature of their work, they were more susceptible, more vulnerable to these rapid fire rate increases that the Fed has put out. Fed was real quick to assure the public that deposits were going to be protected and that there were going to be no taxpayer losses. Even if you went above the $250,000, if you had more than $250,000, under the FDIC guarantee, the protection that's offered by the federal government. Kind of sounds like a government bailout to me. I'm not sure how they wordsmith all of that, but we'll definitely learn more. Apparently another bank in New York ran into some problems. They quickly found, I think, a buyer for the SVB bank. But certainly a cause of concern. But let's keep it in perspective, and frankly, I'm thankful the Fed is acting quickly to avoid any further run-ins. There's some speculation. I read a couple of posts this morning that this was the first Twitter-inspired run on a bank, and I'm not sure how much of that actually played into this, but certainly. Public panic is never good when it comes to these types of situations. So it's good to see that our leaders are taking proactive steps, and hopefully they're the right ones to address this problem. So we'll continue to monitor this. Haven't heard any updates from our National Association on this yet, but I expect we'll hear something a little bit later this week. So I have several kind of association updates a little closer to home that I wanted to share with you today. Some of the good stuff that's happening here at SCR. And if you haven't seen, we've got a new legal resource that we just launched, our SCR Legal Podcast, and that's with Byron King and our legal team. That'll be published, is it monthly, Mike? Are we doing it?
I think so.
We're doing it monthly. We're going to be focused on the top legal hotline topics. We're going to be bringing back Is It Legal, and having some interesting debate among the lawyers on different issues that are coming up in our business. Another risk reduction service that we've just launched last week was our new Forewarn Safety app. It's a member service. It's included as part of your membership for the next 2 years. The product already has received a number of positive reviews and testimonials online. If you did not receive a registration email, please email me or any of the staff at SCR, and we'll make sure that you get an email. There's, because of the safety and liability involved, there's no link online that you can just click. They've got to verify your membership in advance before you can have access to the product. Speaking of which, you need to understand the compliance rules for using Forewarn. And we've got a list of them that have been sent out to all of our members by email. We're going to be posting those online as well. Please take advantage. There are half a dozen or more Forewarn member training webinars that are being scheduled over the following few weeks. And if you have not taken that course yet, please, I encourage you to take the course, the webinar, before you start using the product. You need to understand the compliance rules, because if you violate the compliance rules, you will lose access to the product. Using the product to do background checks on celebrities, your local elected officials, things like that, are all in violation of the guidelines. And that's me trying to be a little funny with it, but it can get very serious if you use the product for profiling or other discriminatory purposes. It can get you in more trouble than just losing the product, or access to the service. So please take the compliance guidelines seriously and learn more about them from SCR. Our Diversity Council is launching a new book club this spring, and the first book on the list is A Color of Law, and this will be held online, the first review of the book. If you haven't read Color of Law, I strongly encourage you to read it. It's a very stark picture of the history of real estate in America, and I think it'll be eye-opening for you if you've never read it. We're also pleased to announce that the author of the book, right, Mike, is going to be part of that conversation. So what better insights can we have than from the author himself? And he'll be joining us for that. Do we have a date for that yet? Do we know?
I can look it up.
Okay, Mike's going to look it up for me. I'll let you know in just a second. Last week, we also launched a new forums webinar. Austin, our in-house YouTube video star, had over, I believe, 700 viewers on the webinar last week, with many more who watched it after the fact. But there's a new personal property disclosure form that helps make it a little easier to describe what's going with the property, what's not going with the property, and addressed and some cleanup language in the occupancy agreements. These are when a buyer or when a seller needs to continue to occupy the property after the closing, or vice versa. I think I got that backwards, Mike. I'll have Austin clear that up for you. But the final change was in the buyer agency agreement. And there used to be an option in that agreement where the buyer had no obligation to compensate you if you were not able to be compensated out of the transaction. That is no longer there. And that's probably the most significant change of all of the forms changes that rolled out last week. So please check those out. And coming up this week, I wanted to make sure to remind you that our women's conference is all set to go for Thursday. Registration is still open. We still have a few seats left, but it's going to be a full house, and looking forward. We've got astronaut Joan Higginbotham is our keynote speaker, and space shuttle pilot. I cannot wait to hear her presentation. It's going to be pretty out of this world. Oh, I couldn't avoid the dad joke this morning. So one last thing, I'm going to introduce a new segment, and I'm going to copy this. In the South Carolina Senate, anytime a senator rises and asks for the microphone, they have to address other senators in the form of a question. It's kind of like being on Jeopardy. You've got to ask a question, unless you're raising a point of order or something. But if you're rising to address another senator, you've got to phrase it in the form of a question. So they always start with, "Did you know?" And then they'll go on and provide all of the background that they wanted to provide initially. So I'm going to start a new session here on our updates called "Did You Know?" I learned something new last week. When the Real Estate Commission issues an order, say an agent is brought before the commission on a disciplinary matter, and the commission finds that the agent violated state law X, Y, or Z, issued discipline X, Y, or Z, or maybe even revoked their license or suspended their license altogether, that order does not take effect until that order is served on the agent. As part of LLR and the Real Estate Commission's requirements to follow due process and the legal steps they have to take. So there may be an agent whose license was revoked last month, but that won't actually show up on the website as being revoked until that order has been served on that agent. So there may be a gap in time when those matters are resolved. So now you know. Mike, did you get a date for me on that other?
I did. So that date's going to be April 5th from 12 to 1:30.
So April 5th, and it's not too far away, just a few weeks, at noon, we'll have our inaugural book club, our diversity committee's book club with the author of The Color of Law. And his name escapes me. Mike, do you have that handy?
Yeah, so that is Richard Rothstein.
Richard Rothstein. I should know that. He became very famous over the last few years after the release of this book. So I think that's it for today. Kind of a long update, but wanted to cover some of the exciting projects we're working on here at SCR. I thought spring had sprung, but now we're back in the winter. It was so cold this morning, I couldn't believe it. But I hope that y'all have a great week. Stay safe, stay realtor strong, and we'll catch up again real soon. Take care.